Commerce Alive Today presents
10 defunct department stores. Sears was founded in 1892 by Richard Warren Sears and Alva Curtis Roebuck and reincorporated in 1906 by Richard Sears and Julius Rosenwald, with what began as a mail-ordering catalog company migrating to opening retail locations on February 2, 1925, as an experiment in the North Lawndale Sears, Roebuck and Company complex. Despite its remote location on the outskirts of Chicago, its success led to dozens of further openings across the country, many in with the company's mail-order offices, typically in lower middle-class and working-class neighborhoods, far from the main downtown shopping district. This was considered highly unconventional at a time when shopping was concentrated in city centers. But through World War II, there was an extensive streetcar network in Chicago and other U.S. cities. However, rapidly increasing car ownership and the brand's huge popularity helped attract customers. Sears reached its pinnacle in the 1970s. In 1974, Sears completed the 110-story Sears Tower in Chicago, which became the world's tallest building, a title it took from the former Twin Towers in New York. Upon moving out of Chicago, Sears sold the Sears Tower in 1988. In the sale contract of the tower, Sears retained its naming rights to the building until 2003, but the Sears Tower retained the name until early 2009, when London-based insurer Willis Group Holdings Limited was given the building's naming rights to encourage them to occupy the building. Sears moved to the new Prairie Stone Business Park in Hoffman Estates, Illinois, between 1993 and 1995. The Sears Center is located in Hoffman Estates adjacent to the Prairie Stone campus. In the 1980s, the company began to diversify into non-retail entities such as buying Dean Witter and Coldwell Banker in 1981. In 1984, it launched Prodigy as a joint venture with IBM, and introduced the Discover credit card in 1985. However, these actions have been said to have distracted management's attention from the core retail business and allowed competing retailers to gain significant ground, culminating with Walmart surpassing Sears as the largest retailer in the United States in 1990. In 2005, the company was bought by the management of the American big box discount chain Kmart, which upon completion of the merger, formed Sears Holdings. Through the 1980s, Sears was the largest retailer in the United States. In 2018, it was the 31st largest. After several years of declining sales, Sears's parent company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on October 15, 2018. It announced on January 16, 2019, that it had won its bankruptcy auction, and that a reduced number of 425 stores would remain open, including 223 Sears stores. Sears was based in the Sears Tower in Chicago from 1973 until 1995, and was later headquartered in Hoffman Estates, Illinois from 1993 until 2021, the year when it announced that it would be selling its Hoffman Estates headquarters complex. On December 12, 2022, Sears authorized Hometown Stores, LLC, and affiliated debtor Sears Hometown, Inc., filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, and on December 26 announced the liquidation of the 115 largely owner-operated Hometown stores. As of April 2024, there are 11 Sears stores remaining, with 10 in the mainland U.S. and 1 location in the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. The company was founded in Chicago in 1872 by Aaron Montgomery Ward. Ward, a New Jersey native, arrived in Chicago in 1866 and found a job with Field, Palmer Leiter, the large dry goods business that would become Marshall Field's. After selling Field's products in hard-to-reach rural areas for years, Ward decided to create an easier means to market merchandise. In 1892, Ward and brother-in-law George R. Thorne invested $2,400 in a new mail-order business. Boosted by orders from members of the Patrons of Husbandry, the Midwestern Farmers Association, for which it served as an official supply house, the business grew rapidly. In 1874, the catalog was 32 pages. By 1876, a 152-page Ward catalog listed 3,000 items. The slogan adopted in 1875, "Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back." By 1897, annual sales had reached $7 million and the catalog was nearly 1,000 pages long. In 1900, there were about 1,400 workers at the company's Michigan Avenue headquarters. 10 years later, when annual sales stood at nearly $19 million, Ward employed more than 7,000 Chicago area residents at its new facility along the North Branch of the Chicago River. As branches were added across the country, annual sales grew over $100 million by 1920. In 1926, when it decided to follow the lead of its main rival, by opening retail stores. By 1931, there were more than 530 Montgomery Ward stores across the country. Led by Sewell Avery, the company continued to grow during the Great Depression. Between 1928 and 1941, annual sales grew from $200 million to $600 million. By the early 1940s, Ward employed over 70,000 people nationwide. Although annual sales passed $1 billion in 1956, Ward grew more slowly during the second half of the 20th century than it had previously. In 1968, Ward merged with the Container Corporation of America. In 1974, with about 450 stores in the U.S. and $900 million, Ward was purchased by the Mobil Oil after Mobil sold Ward. By the 1990s, even its rivals began to lose ground to low-price competition from the likes of Target and Walmart, which eroded even more of Montgomery Ward's traditional customer base. In 1997, it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, emerging from protection by the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Northern District of Illinois in August 1999 as a wholly owned subsidiary of GE Capital, which was by then its largest shareholder. As part of a last-ditch effort to remain competitive, the company closed over 100 retail locations in 30 U.S. states, abandoned the specialty store strategy, rebranded the chain as simply Ward's, and spent millions of dollars to renovate its remaining outlets to be flashier and more consumer-friendly. GE Capital reneged on promises of further financial support of Montgomery Ward's restructuring plans. On December 28, 2000, after lower-than-expected sales during the Christmas season, the company announced it would cease operating, close its remaining 250 retail outlets, and lay off its 37,000 employees. After nearly 130 years in business as a leading American retailer, the company founded by Aaron Montgomery Ward was gone. On August 5, 2008, the catalog retailer Swiss Colony purchased Montgomery Ward's trademark. Swiss Colony, which changed its name to Colony Brands Inc. John Wanamaker Department Store was one of the first department stores in the United States. Founded by John Wanamaker in Philadelphia in 1861, it was influential in the development of the retail industry, including as the first store to use price tags. Wanamaker first thought of how he would run a store on new principles when, as a youth, a merchant refused his request to exchange a purchase. A practicing Christian, he chose not to advertise on Sundays. Before he opened his Grand Depot for retail business, he let evangelist Dwight L. Moody use its facilities as a meeting place, while Wanamaker provided 300 ushers from his store personnel. His retail advertisements, the first to be copyrighted beginning in 1874, were factual, and promises made in them were kept. At its zenith in the early 20th century, Wanamaker's also had a store in New York City at Broadway and 9th Street in Manhattan. Both employed extremely large staffs. By the end of the 20th century, there were 16 Wanamaker's outlets. After years of change, the chain was bought by A. Alfred Taubman in late 1986, and added to Taubman's previous purchase of Woodward Lothrop, the Washington, D.C. department store. In 1994, Woody's, as it was known, filed for bankruptcy. The assets of Woody's were purchased by the May Company department stores and J.C. Penney. In 1995, Wanamaker's transitioned to Hecht's, one of the May Company brands. In 2006, Macy's opened in the former Philadelphia Wanamaker's department store, now called Macy's Center City. The building is a National Historic Landmark. One of its expansions was designed by master architect Daniel Burnham. It contains the Wanamaker organ, the largest functional organ in the world. Strawbridge Clothier began as a dry goods store founded by Justice Clayton Strawbridge and Isaac Hollowell Clothier in Philadelphia in 1868. Strawbridge Clothier purchased the three-story brick building on the northwest corner of Market and 8th Streets in Center City, Philadelphia, and opened their first store. They soon replaced the old building with one of 5 stories, and then expanded into neighboring buildings as well. The SC Seal of Confidence from 1911 to 2006, depicting William Penn and a Lenape tribesman shaking hands, their never written, never broken treaty. It stood for SC's Quaker-based tradition of fairness and honesty, which included a money-back guarantee on all merchandise. The building subsequently became the eastern anchor in 1977 of the Gallery, an urban mall connecting Strawbridge Clothier with Gimbels, which had relocated from across Market Street to join the mall. It was the vision of SC Chairman Stockton Strawbridge that was instrumental in revitalizing the Market East retail district in the 1970s, a vision that is still apparent today despite their demise. He once said that his goal was to transform fading East Market Street into the Champs-Élysées of Philadelphia. The retailer started adding branch stores starting in the 1930s and, by their zenith in the 1980s, enjoyed annual sales of over $1 billion. After successfully fighting off a hostile takeover attempt by Ronald S. Barron in 1986, Strawbridge Clothier survived as an independent, locally owned department store into the 1990s. In 1995, in an attempt to become the dominant retailer in the Philadelphia region, SC partnered with Federated Department Stores, Pomeroy's, and the Reuben Brothers Real Estate Development Company to acquire their rival Wanamaker's, but were outbid in bankruptcy court by May Department Stores Company. Subsequently, the 13 Strawbridge Clothier stores were themselves bought by May in 1996. When the Strawbridge Clothier directors, mostly members of the Strawbridge and Clothier families, elected to liquidate operations over objections of patriarch Stockton Strawbridge. Strawbridge died not long after the sale. He was the store, and the store was him, said his attorney Peter Hearn to the Philadelphia Daily News. After the sale, the stores operated simply as Strawbridge's, although exterior signage reading Strawbridge Clothier remained in place at many locations until the stores became Macy's in 2006. May had merged the former John Wanamaker into its Hecht's banner, but converted them to Strawbridge's as well, except for Wanamaker's former flagship on Market Street, which eventually became a Lord Taylor and is now Macy's. However, the Strawbridge Clothier head office was closed and its operations were consolidated with Hecht's in Arlington, Virginia. May operated the Strawbridge's stores under the Northern Virginia-based Hecht's division. On February 1, 2006, the former May Company divisions were all dissolved, and operating control of the remaining Strawbridge's stores was assumed by Macy's. Macy's closed Strawbridge's flagship Center City store on May 23, 2006. On September 9, 2006, the Strawbridge's and Hecht's nameplates were completely phased out in favor of the Macy's brand. Litt Brothers was founded in 1891 when Colonel Samuel David Litt and Jacob David Litt. Their small store soon became one of the largest retail stores in Philadelphia. From 1895 to 1907, the store continued to expand, with the company taking over the remaining buildings on the block of Market between North 7th and 8th Streets, including the J.M. Maris Dry Goods Store, the Bailey Store and the J.B. Lippincott Company. Building and adding new buildings at either end of the block designed to blend in with the existing buildings. With alterations and additions, the Litt Brothers store became the only full block of Victorian architecture in Philadelphia. Composed of 33 buildings constructed between 1859 and 1918, with a common interior. The new buildings and the alterations were designed by Charles M. Autenrieth and Edward Collins. Although the store on Market Street was often called the Cast Iron Building, only two of original buildings' facades at 719 to 721 Market and 714 to 718 Arch Street are actually cast iron. The other buildings are brick, faced with marble or granite. The two end buildings are brick and terracotta, with galvanized iron trim and octagonal towers. The uniformity of the entire Renaissance Revival style facade is supported by the use of a classical arch window in all of the buildings, which are painted the same color. The company was purchased in 1928 by Albert M. Greenfield's Bankers Securities Corporation and was eventually merged into its City Stores Company, now CSS Industries Incorporated. In 1962, they purchased the suburban locations of Snellenberg's, another Philadelphia department store chain owned by Bankers Securities Corporation, which was closed in 1963. Faced with growing competition in a changing retail landscape, Litt Brothers closed its doors in 1977. Gimbel patriarch Adam Gimbel opened his first store in Vincennes, Indiana, in 1842. In 1887, the company moved its operations to the Gimbel Brothers department store in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It became a chain when it opened a second, larger store in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in 1894, moving its headquarters there. At the urging of future company president Bernard Gimbel, grandson of the founder, the company expanded to New York City in 1910. The company is known for creating the oldest Thanksgiving parade, the Gimbels Thanksgiving Day Parade, originating in 1920 in Philadelphia. Gimbels was also considered the chief rival of Macy's, with their feud popularized in American culture. As of 1930, Gimbels had grown to 20 stores, whose sales revenue made it the largest department store chain in the world. The company expanded to a peak of 53 stores by 1965. Brown Williamson, the American subsidiary of British American Tobacco, a diversified conglomerate based in Louisville, Kentucky, acquired Gimbels in 1973. Brown Williamson also owned Marshall Field's, Frederick Nelson, the Crescent Stores, and Kohl's. Brown Williamson later created the Betis Retail Group as a subsidiary company for its retail holdings. Betis initially left the Gimbels chain in the four autonomous divisions that had been established under Gimbel family ownership: Gimbels New York, Gimbels Philadelphia, Gimbels Pittsburgh, and Gimbels Milwaukee. Each division operated independently of each other in advertising and buying. Each division offered their own charge card, which could only be used at Gimbels stores in the same division. In 1983, Gimbels New York and Gimbels Philadelphia were combined into a single entity, Gimbels East, in an attempt to reduce corporate overhead. Deciding that Gimbels was a marginal performer with little potential for increased profitability, Betis in 1986 decided to close its Gimbels division and sell its store properties. Some of the more attractive branches were taken over by Stearns, Pomeroy's, Kaufman's, or Boston store. The cornerstone of the chain, the downtown Milwaukee store where Adam Gimbel had first found success and most profitable store, was handed to Betis' sister division Marshall Field's, but eventually closed in 1997. In 1883, Elder-Beerman history began when the Boston Dry Goods store was opened on East 3rd Street in downtown Dayton, Ohio by Thomas Elder, William Hunter, Jr. and Russell Johnston, selling textiles, clothing, and groceries. In 1896, the store moved to a new 11-story skyscraper, the Rybold Building, at the corner of 4th and Main Streets. It operated there as the Elder Johnston Company department store for over 60 years. For most of its later history, its headquarters was located in Moraine, Ohio, and operated a flagship 6th-floor location in downtown Dayton, Ohio. In 1962, Beerman stores merged with the Elder Johnston to form Elder-Beerman. At this time, the Elder Johnston Company's Rybold Building location was closed in favor of the home store location. In the 1960s and 1970s, Elder-Beerman expanded throughout western Ohio and surrounding states, including standalone furniture stores. After Beerman's death in 1970, Gutman was promoted to chairman and chief executive officer. In 1976, the downtown Dayton store was relocated to a new building on Courthouse Square, which had 5 stories, including the basement. In 1978, Elder-Beerman expanded into the Cincinnati area, purchasing Mabley Carew's 4 stores. In 1985, Herb Glazer was named president and CEO of the department store division. With Herb Glazer as president, Gutman and Glazer developed the Elder-Beerman franchise through the 1980s and early 1990s. When the company was forced to file for Chapter 11 reorganization in 1995, Max Gutman and Herb Glazer returned from retirement to turn the company around. During the bankruptcy, Frederick J. Mershad asked to replace Gutman as chairman and chief executive officer. As a result of the bankruptcy, Elder-Beerman closed all of their Margot's La Mode stores in early 1996. Elder-Beerman has acquired 3 chains throughout its history: Cincinnati-based Mabley Carew in 1978, Terre Haute, Indiana-based Mice in 1989, and Wheeling, West Virginia-based Stone Thomas in 1998. Elder-Beerman was acquired by the Bon Ton in 2003. At that point, Elder-Beerman was the 9th largest independent department store chain, and had exited bankruptcy and was in discussions to go private when Bon Ton stepped in, offering more cash for outstanding stock. Elder-Beerman's brand was kept active on its 68 stores in 8 states after the merger, and Elder-Beerman CEO Bud Berggren would become CEO of Bon Ton in 2004. In 2012, the Bon Ton began rebranding Elder-Beerman stores to some of its other nameplates. Several in Michigan and Indiana were converted to Carson's or Younkers. This rebranding reduced the number of Elder-Beerman stores to 37, primarily in Ohio. On April 17, 2018, the Bon Ton, as a part of its own Chapter 11 bankruptcy, was purchased by a joint venture composed of the holders of the company's 8% second lien secured notes due 2021 and Great American Group, LLC and Tiger Capital Group, LLC, with the intention of liquidating the Bon Ton and its subsidiaries, including Elder-Beerman, which had operated for 135 years. All Elder-Beerman stores in the chain, as well as Bon Ton-owned department stores, closed on August 29, 2018, ending Elder-Beerman as a brick-and-mortar retailer. The chain began in 1854 when Scotsmen Samuel Carson and John Pirie first clerked in the Murray's dry goods store in Peru, Illinois, then opened their own store in LaSalle, followed by one in Amboy. In 1871, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed 60% of the store's stock. John Edwin Scott operated a dry goods store in Ottawa, Illinois. He later moved up to Chicago and became the first partner of Samuel Carson and John T. Pirie in the ownership of a dry goods store, well known today as Carson Pirie Scott Company. 2 of John Scott's sons, Robert L. and Frederick H., were members of the department store firm. In 1961, Carson Pirie Scott Company greatly expanded in Illinois by purchasing the 20-unit block Cole chain headquartered in Peoria. In 1980, to diversify its business, Carson Pirie Scott Company borrowed $108 million to buy Dobbs Houses Incorporated, an airline caterer and owner of the Toddle House and Steak and Egg Kitchen restaurant chains. These were sold in 1988, as was the County Seat clothing chain. In 1989, Carson Pirie Scott Company was acquired by P.A. Bergner Company, who operated the Bergners, Charles V, Weiss, Myers Brothers and Boston store chains. In 1991, P.A. Bergner Company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Upon emerging from bankruptcy in 1993, it became a NASDAQ publicly traded company, changing its operating name to Carson Pirie Scott Company. 1 year later, the company commenced trading on the NYSE under the CRP symbol. By 1998, Carson Pirie Scott Company ownership was held by Saks Incorporated. The Carson Pirie Scott, Bergners, and Boston store chains, along with Younkers and Herberger's nameplates, eventually operated as Saks Northern Department Store Group, based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In late 2005, however, the group was put up for sale as Saks Incorporated tried to refocus itself primarily on its core Saks Fifth Avenue stores. Carson's and its associated stores became part of the Bon-Ton stores in a $1.1 billion deal completed on March 6, 2006. The group's merchandising and marketing base remained in Milwaukee. Bon-Ton converted Elder-Beerman stores in Indiana and Michigan to the newly shortened Carson's name in 2011 and 2012. The chain expanded into Metro Detroit in 2013 with the conversion of 3 Parisian stores. Bon-Ton announced on April 17, 2018 that they would cease operations and began liquidating all 267 stores after 2 liquidators, Great American Group and Tiger Capital Group, won an auction for the company. The bid was estimated to be worth $775.5 million. This included all remaining Carson stores after 164 years of operation. According to national retail reporter Mitch Nolan, stores closed within 10 to 12 weeks. Mervyn G. Morris founded the first Mervyn's department store in San Lorenzo, California, on July 29, 1949. The store was supposed to be named Mervyn's, but a designer suggested that a spelling with a Y instead of an I would be more visually appealing. Mervyn's was located in the midst of San Lorenzo Village, a planned residential community between the cities of Hayward and San Leandro, composed of 2- and 3-bedroom tract homes built between 1944 and the 1950s. Mervyn's carved a niche for itself by having a relatively no-frills shopping environment that reduced overhead, enabling the store to price merchandise lower than competing department stores. Mervyn's also offered significantly discounted factory seconds of basics such as jeans, t-shirts, underwear and similar garments, as well as household linens, with flaws minor and undetectable by most. During the 1950s and 1960s, this made Mervyn's popular with the young suburban families comprising the majority of San Lorenzo's population. This marketing strategy was later abandoned before Mervyn's expanded beyond its original single location, but Mervyn's remained popular as a lower-priced alternative to national department store chains. The second Mervyn store opened about 15 miles south as an anchor tenant of the Fremont Hub Shopping Center, one of 2 regional malls in Fremont, California, in 1962. From 1995 to 2001, the stores were rebranded as Mervyn's California, in an effort to identify with its West Coast roots. A media campaign was launched to publicize the rebranding, with TV commercials and catalogs featuring former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Joe Montana. The rebranding had little effect on the company's revenues, and the California was dropped from the name in 2001, reverting to the original name. The majority of their stores in Texas didn't even consider adding the California name to their stores. In March 2004, Target Corporation announced that they planned to put the Mervyn's and Marshall Field's divisions up for sale to focus on Target stores. Target Corporation was approached by many buyers for both stores, but many of the potential buyers saw value only in the real estate. Target refused to sell to the groups that wanted to purchase Mervyn's for the property value only. Target would only consider deals that would not close the company and put the then 30,000 employees out of work. In 2006, Mervyn's had 189 stores in 10 states. 1 year later, after Mervyn's closed its stores in Oregon and Washington, Mervyn's had reduced its store count to 177 stores in 7 states. On October 17, 2008, the company announced that it would liquidate its assets through a Chapter 7 filing. All remaining locations were closed by the end of the year. The Morris family, having bought back intellectual property rights to the company in 2009, announced plans to relaunch Mervyn's as an internet-based enterprise, but the proposed revival never came to fruition. The company was founded by 3 Polish Jewish immigrant brothers Lipman, Samuel, and Marcus Younkers, who opened a general store in Keokuk, Iowa, in 1856. Herman Younkers, a younger half-brother to the 3 founders, opened a dry goods store in Des Moines, Iowa, in 1874. Following Samuel's death in 1879, the Keokuk store was closed and the Des Moines location became the main store. The future novelist and newspaper editor Eleanor Hoyt Brainerd worked as a clerk at the Younkers store in Des Moines in 1889. In 1899, the Younkers brothers' main store in downtown Des Moines was moved to 7th and Walnut Streets, and it operated at the same location for 106 years before closing on August 12, 2005. The downtown Des Moines store became known for its Tea Room restaurant, which opened in 1913 and closed shortly before the store did. It also installed Iowa's first escalator, known as the Electric Stairs, in 1939. A series of additions, enlargements, and mergers resulted in the company changing its name to Younkers Incorporated. The department store in downtown Des Moines was purchased in 1912. The company started growing in the 1920s by acquiring other department stores throughout Iowa, including Wilkins Department Stores in 1923, Harris Emery in 1927, and J. Mandelbaum and Sons in 1928. The Iowa-based retailers Brintnall's of Marshalltown and Davidson's of Sioux City were acquired in 1948 and Yetters of Iowa City was acquired in 1949. Younkers began expanding outside of Iowa during the 1950s and opened its first shopping mall store in Omaha, Nebraska, in 1955. It acquired another Omaha department store, Kilpatrick's, in 1961. By 1978, Younkers had 28 stores in 5 states. Younkers was operated by the Equitable of Iowa Insurance Company from 1979 to 1992 after being a publicly traded company since 1948. Under Equitable's ownership, Younkers acquired all 11 locations of the department store chain in 1987. After returning to public ownership on the NASDAQ on April 22, 1992, Younkers purchased the 22 stores of the H.C. Prang chain in Wisconsin and Michigan. After a hostile takeover bid by Carson Pirie Scott was rejected in 1995, Younkers shareholders agreed to a friendly merger by Profits, of Knoxville, Tennessee. The merger was completed in December 1996. Profits would later acquire Carson Pirie Scott, and in 1998 Profits acquired Saks Fifth Avenue to form Saks Incorporated. In 2003, Saks closed Younkers' headquarters in Des Moines and merged operations with those of Carson Pirie Scott in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Saks sold Younkers and its other Northern Department Store Group stores to Bon-Ton Stores in a $1.1 billion deal completed on March 6, 2006. On January 31, 2018, Bon-Ton announced that they were going to close 42 locations nationwide, including 9 in the state of Wisconsin between February and April 2018. It was further announced on April 17, 2018 that Bon-Ton stores would be closing doors and began liquidating all 267 stores after 2 liquidators, Great American Group and Tiger Capital Group, won an auction for the company. The bid was estimated to be worth $775.5 million. This included all remaining Younkers locations after 162 years of operation. On August 29, 2018, Younkers closed its doors and shut down.
If you have any fond memories, please indicate it at the comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and like.